Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 28th of November 2024 and these are the stories that we'll be deciphering during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the gamut of relations between Pakistan and China. We know of all the kinds of cooperation that both the countries are having since the last few decades, and that relationship has only become more robust and more strong over the decades, despite the different ideas that different countries across the world project as far as our relationship is concerned. Nothing has dented our relationship in the last few decades. Recently also General Zhao, who is the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission of the People's Republic of China and one of China's two top military leaders, of course is visiting Pakistan on an official visit, and he has met with our Chief of the Army Staff, and they have discussed the different facets of the relations between the two countries, and that includes counterterrorism and military cooperation as well. We will be highlighting that and more in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Middle East situation and of course the conflict that has now reached its 417th day. Although on the one side the Hezbollah Israel ceasefire deal has begun, but people who are returning to Lebanon are only seeing destruction where they used to live at one point. On the same side, when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to Gaza, the barbarities continue as far as Israel is concerned. Joe Biden says there might be a lot of effort put in now to also move for a ceasefire between Palestine and Israel. But will that happen? We haven't seen the 3-point agenda of Joe Biden being implemented in letter and spirit. Nevertheless, there is still hope that there might be an end to this barbarism, this war against humanity and genocide in Palestine. This is going to be our second segment. Then we are going to talk about the historic milestone that has been achieved at the Pakistan Stock Index, where it has surpassed the 100,000 barrier. Never, I mean even myself as a journalist would have ever thought that one day will come when Pakistan will cross that 100,000 benchmark, and it has in fact, and that shows a lot of promise as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned, and also the investor confidence that shows through this benchmark that Pakistan has achieved today. Finally, we are going to talk about misinformation or disinformation. UNESCO says 2/3 of content creators fail to check the accuracy of their material, making them and their followers vulnerable to misinformation. On the same point, the United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres also says that social media and AI is fueling the worst human impulses. We are seeing an example of that in Pakistan as well, especially when it comes to social media. Anyways, this is a global phenomenon, and that is what is being said by UNESCO as well as our United Nations Secretary General as well. This is the lineup for today. Let's begin our show and talk about Pakistan-China relations. We've been joined by two guests, one in the studios and one online, all the way from China. Here in Pakistan, we've been joined by Syed Muhammad Ali. He's a senior analyst. Thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us. And online, we've been joined by Yunfei Zhao. He's a CGTN reporter, joins us from China. Thank you very much, Yunfei, to have joined us. I'll begin with you, Yunfei, because of course, let's begin with the Chinese perspective on things. Counter-terrorism, regional security takes center stage during the military talks between Pakistan and China. Yesterday. Now, General Zhang Yuxia, who is the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission of the People's Republic of China and one of the top two military leaders, he is in Pakistan, and he met with General Asim Munir, who is the Chief of the Army Staff. Now, all right, we will be taking your answer a bit shortly. We'll be talking about the bilateral relations and cooperation in regional security dynamics, but we'll come back after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and we're talking about Pakistan-China relations, and we are of course having two guests in this segment. We were talking to Yunfei Zhao, who is a CGTN reporter. Yunfei, I hope you're still online with us.
Yes, I hear you.
All right, wonderful. Yunfei, now I was trying to understand the bilateral relations and cooperation in regional security dynamics, measures for regional stability, and enhancing bilateral defense cooperation when it comes to both the People's Republic of China and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And how do you see China's backing of the Pakistani perspective on issues that concern regional peace and security?
Well, Omar, I think we're talking about very practical cooperation when it comes to security cooperation. And what is really underway is they called it Warrior 8. It's a joint anti-terrorism exercises between the militaries of China and Pakistan, and that will last from late November to mid-December. From China's perspective, they have dispatched the Western Theater Command soldiers to Pakistan, and the joint there are many items from the joint terrorism, counterterrorism cleanup. There are strike operations, mixed training, as well as putting things into a real combat situation like live troops drills. So when we talk about this kind of cooperation, this has not come up abruptly. This is actually the eighth joint exercise of the series between the Chinese and Pakistan militaries. And last time, it was a bit long time ago. The last time was back in 2019. That was before the pandemic. But you can see the patterns between the two militaries, that how the two militaries cope each other. But if you standing from the current situation, compare with what really happened back in 2019, many things have happened. If you look at the situation in Ukraine, if you could look at the security situation in the Middle East and give another layer of urgency when it comes to anti-terrorism campaigns. So when China and Pakistan leaders, when they meet each other, for example, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, when he met with a Pakistani counterpart in Beijing in May, he says that the international community should build a united front against the terrorism, and then this is lying on the logic of zero tolerance against attitude against the terrorism, and you should eradicate the breeding ground for the terrorism by addressing both the symptoms as well as the root causes. And I think that these are the areas that China and Pakistan really dive into.
So we'll go to Syed Muhammad Ali, who is, of course, our guest in the studios. Now, during these talks between the Chinese general and our Chief of the Army Staff, highlighted the resilience of Pakistan-China relations, noting their ability to withstand shifts in international and regional dynamics. And we've seen many a times this shift in order to, put some kind of a dent in our relations. He also expressed gratitude for China's unwavering support for Pakistan. Now, the two generals had met last time in the April of 2023, where General Zhang had pledged to deepen and expand practical cooperation, elevate military-to-military ties, jointly safeguard common interests of both countries, and promote regional peace and stability. How important are these paradigms still now, today, in this meeting, and of course, in the end of 2024?
Thank you for having me on your show. I think right now, perhaps from a Pakistani perspective, the bilateral relations with China are perhaps the most precious relations that Pakistan has with any neighbor as well as with any global power. And it has four dimensions. Let me simplify the nature and the scope of these very special relations from Pakistan's perspective. It has a political dimension, it has a diplomatic dimension, it has an economic dimension, and it has a security dimension. In terms of political dimension, the most special aspect is that China is Pakistan's only neighbor and friend, which shares Pakistan's principled stance on territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national security, and non-interference in the domestic politics of Pakistan. That is something which we really appreciate and recognize, unlike many other countries. Secondly, in the diplomatic domain, I think we have two approaches towards our close relations with China. At the bilateral level, we respect each other's territorial integrity, each other's security concerns. Pakistan is a devout, consistent advocate of one China policy, and China is equally respectful of Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity expectations. At the multilateral level, I think our relations are expanding and deepening much more than before. The evidence is whether it is United Nations Security Council, of which Pakistan is right now a non-permanent member, or international issues and disputes like Ukraine conflict or conflict in the Middle East. We have a principled stance of upholding the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all nation states and members of the UN. And more recently, we have become a very active member of SCO, which is a Beijing-led organization, fast expanding, and Pakistan recently hosted a very successful international summit. And Pakistan is also applicant in the BRICS arrangement, of which we expect a valuable and substantive support from China for Pakistan's membership. So in multilateral setting as well, our relations are improving and expanding. Now, quickly coming to the economic dimension, I think it is not news but a reality that in entire Pakistani history, the most substantive, tangible investment in Pakistan's economic future and viability is CPEC, which is the flagship project of the global Belt and Road Initiative of China. And lastly, but not the least, is the security and defense dimension, and more increasingly all three security forces of Pakistan, not just army, but also Air Force and Navy, are increasing their substantive defense cooperation and collaboration and joint production with China far more than perhaps any other country, whether it is F-22P frigates, whether it is JF-17 Thunder, whether it is Al-Khalid tank, or whether it is Al-Haider tank. All these successful projects are evidence of our close and special defense cooperation between Beijing and Islamabad.
All right. Also, Ali, you know, in September this very year, Pakistan and China had agreed to enhance cooperation in various fields, including counterterrorism, cross-border collaboration and anti-smuggling. This was a meeting between our Minister for Interior with a high-level Chinese delegation led by Minister for Political and Legal Affairs in Islamabad. And now we have this meeting that has again happened between the Chinese general and the Pakistani general as well. How do you view this side of bilateral cooperation, that is counterterrorism and defense cooperation? You've highlighted some of the aspects of that, but how, in your point of view, should both the countries move to further strengthen this cooperation to stabilize the region?
I think in the third domain, which I mentioned, that is of geoeconomics, and China being the largest foreign direct investor in Pakistan's entire history in terms of its over $62 billion worth of commitment and investment in CPEC. The most critical aspect is to ensure that this investment remains safe and secure from all spoilers and non-state actors and terrorists which are trying to harm this very special relationship, which augurs and could herald a new era of prosperity and connectivity for this entire region, not just for China and Pakistan. And China and Pakistan both mutually recognize that regional security, particularly terrorism, represents the most grave threat to regional connectivity, prosperity and development of this region, and particularly Pakistan.
That is important.
Some of the terrorists, you know, are particularly interested in targeting and harming Chinese investment and personnel in Pakistan as part of their regional approach to reduce and dent Chinese confidence, which thankfully has not happened.
Of course, and we are looking forward to a more robust relationship in these fields and many other fields with China as well, as we have always had. Now, coming to you, Yunfei Zhao, the Foreign Office of Pakistan also emphasizes that counter-terrorism cooperation between the two countries is based on mutual respect for each other's sovereignty. How, in your point of view, can both countries jointly thwart the nefarious designs of such elements that are trying to create a rift between Pakistan and China?
Well, I think that's a good point because Mr. Ali also mentioned multiple times that the tight relationship are really based on the mutual respect and mutual trust. If you look at the relationship between the two countries, it's all weather strategic cooperation, cooperative partnership, and that means that despite the fact that how the world landscape situation changes, the two sides stand each other. So it's a very close relationship, and that really heavily lies on the mutual respect and mutual trust. From Pakistan perspective, it respects China's one China principle, as my colleague mentioned before, And China also, respect, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Pakistan. And that really laid a foundation for, as we mentioned, the counterterrorism, anti-terrorism, and any security cooperation mechanism. And this is really taking a further step to consolidate and deepen practical exchanges and cooperation and enhance the capability for conducting joint counterterrorism operations.
All right, coming to you, Ali, we've just heard what our correspondent from CGTN had to say. When you look at counterterrorism from a Pakistani or Chinese perspective, there are elements, of course, that are trying to harm, as you yourself pointed out in your last response. But what should be the paradigms of such a counterterrorism response that both the countries could jointly work on?
I think I reciprocate Mr. Zhao's perspective and emphasis that China has a zero tolerance policy towards terrorism, because China is deeply committed to development of the global south as part of the BRI project generally and globally, but more specifically towards CPEC in terms of which is critical and unique and special for Pakistan's socio-economic progress, not just to help Pakistan address the current economic challenges. So the biggest threat to that is again definitely terrorism, and which is sponsored and supported by those countries and entities which have a geopolitical agenda of not just harming the Chinese interests and attacking Chinese personnel, but as my friend highlighted, denting and weakening Chinese trust in Pakistan. So that is very important for the Chinese leadership to recognize that agenda and thwart it, not just at the counterterrorism and military cooperation level, but I would urge my Chinese friends to consider diplomatic efforts and emphasis as well, because China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. There's these issues which definitely require a zero tolerance approach in terms of military cooperation and counterterrorism strategy, intelligence sharing, and effective and capable forces which must carry out timely and effective operations against the terrorists. But this military effort needs to be reinforced at the diplomatic level, at the UN and other forums like SCO and other organizations, where those countries which are sponsoring and supporting terrorism and targeting Chinese and Pakistani interests must be identified, must be exposed, and must be highlighted before the international community, because this diplomatic effort is as precious and important as is the military prong.
All right, coming to you, Yunfei, this is my last question to you. During a recent media briefing at the Chinese consulate in Karachi, the Consul General of China in Karachi, Yang Yundong, talks about the recent visit to Pakistan of Excellency Li Qiang, following our Prime Minister's visit to Beijing as well, that exemplifies the high-level cooperation between both the countries. The diplomat also says that this relationship has always been a priority as far as China's foreign relations are concerned. How, in your point of view, from a Chinese perspective, can we further strengthen this relation? And I'd also like to understand, now that I have you, what makes this relationship unique from your perspective?
Let me first start from your last question. From my perspective, I mean, if you from people to people perspective, this is a relationship, what we call ironclad relationship. So when we talk about Pakistani, we'll talk about our friends, our ironclad friends. I hope vice versa. So certainly a lot of the leaders between our two countries really emphasize that the relationship, when it talks about diplomatic relationship, really emphasizing on the internal internal energy that can give the spice of the bilateral relationship. You mentioned about Premier Lee when he held talks with the Pakistani official in October, and he mentioned to upgrade the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC. The upgraded version really covered to speeding up the construction of the railways, highways, and ports, and enhancing industrial integration and development, and further expanding the fields of cooperation to agriculture, mining, information technology, energy, and other fields. So certainly, this is something that extending the livelihood to improve the livelihood of the people from the both sides that really relies on the political and mutual trust, as well as obeying the international order.
All right. Thank you so very much, Yunfei Zhao, reporter from the CGTN, to have joined us all the way from China to give a Chinese perspective of this bilateral relationship and cooperation that is being solidified by the different high-level visits, including that of the General Zhang Yuxia, who is the Vice Chairman of Central Military Commission of China, who is right here. And of course, this inshallah will continue in the days and months to come, and we look forward to many such opportunities from both the sides. Thank you very much again to have joined us, and thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us and to have given us the Pakistani perspective of that relationship, and especially with the angle to counter-terrorism and defense cooperation. I think this is an exemplary relationship that can show the world on how two countries can move together forward and strengthen the region and strengthen their own nations as well. Thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us. Let's come to our next story, and that concerns the Middle East situation. And of course, we are day 417 of that. There is ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, but at the same time, Israel is saying that it has this ceasefire has now been breached. Whether it has or not is another question altogether. Then comes the situation in Palestine, wherein the number of casualties continues to increase with every passing day. The number of injured continues to increase with every passing day. Although Joe Biden does say that there is a chance of peace also returning to Palestine, there might be a deal also that could be made between Palestine and Israel as well. But will that ever happen? Will that see the light of day? Because there was a 3-phase ceasefire deal that was proposed by Joe Biden a couple of months back that never materialized because of Israel non-compliance. Then, of course, there were other propositions that were also put forward, but they never came to fruition. At the same time, what is happening in the occupied West Bank, what is happening as far as the statements of the Israeli leaders is concerned, as far as their annexation of the occupied West Bank is concerned, a future annexation as well, and the whole situation as far as Palestine is concerned raises a lot of doubts on what seems to be the future of this Palestinian state. Will the people in Palestine continue to bear the brunt of the Israeli oppression, brutalities, genocide with each passing day? Will this continue? Will this ever come to a stop? We've been joined by two guests to discuss that in detail. In the studio, we've been joined by Dr. Tughral Yamin. He's a senior analyst. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. And in the studios, online rather, we've been joined all the way from Jenin by Osama Muhammad Nazzal, who's a Palestinian journalist. Osama, thank you very much to have joined us as well. Let's begin with you, Dr. Tughral Yamin. This ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, which Israel says has now been breached. I mean, this is its point of view. It has nevertheless raised hopes not only for the people in Lebanon, but also for the people in Palestine. Some Palestinians in Gaza are also extremely happy that, this seems to be a way forward. Maybe we might be seeing a ceasefire happening in Palestine as well. Let's come to the Hezbollah-Israel deal. Will this deal outrun the time that it is for, or will it survive? Because already Israel is talking about a breach of this ceasefire. What are the consequences of such a ceasefire deal, both for Lebanon and for Gaza?
Thank you very much, Omar Saab. First of all, I must say that this ceasefire, although Israel says it has been breached, it's a good thing it has happened, because for the last 14 months at least the people in Gaza have been suffering, and people in Lebanon have also been struck by the constant, incessant Israeli bombardment. But they have started returning to their homes. The The pictures that I saw this morning in the newspapers were people returning to their homes in Lebanon. So it's a good beginning. Ceasefires are always very fragile, and ceasefires have to be monitored. And therefore, you have the UN peacekeepers, UN military observers who go and make sure that the ceasefires are not breached, they are not violated, and the parties to the conflict abide by the rules of engagement, that is, they will not fire at each other. So I am not very sure how they are going to make sure that this ceasefire remains sacrosanct. I have no idea if a certain mechanism has been created or not. But nonetheless, it's a good beginning. I think the next step should be, there are already UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. We already know that Israelis have also targeted the UN peacekeepers. I think a few of them have been killed also. So there is a problem. Peacekeepers, the military observers are not armed, and that is how they prove that they are genuine. They will not attack anybody, the parties involved. So this is a good beginning. The people in Gaza are also fed up. 14 months, more than roughly 45,000 people have been killed, and this is going on endlessly.
I mean, that is so unfortunate. That is so unfortunate. But maybe what is happening in Lebanon might pave the way for some kind of a ceasefire deal.
Perhaps.
Let's look at the reactions. Iran's parliament speaker says we welcome the ceasefire in Lebanon after the oppression and criminal bombings by the Zionist regime. Tonight, the people are experiencing peace. I hope this peace will also be experienced in Gaza. China's foreign ministry spokesperson Mao Ning, in a regular briefing in Beijing, also supports all the efforts conducive to de-escalating the tensions and realizing peace. Is this a global concern, this de-escalation and peace? And if so, shouldn't there be more pressure exerted on Israel and Israel's close allies?
Absolutely, there should be more pressure, but that's the unfortunate part. The world is apathetic. We know that the West is aligned with Israel. The US is also backing Israel. Mr. Biden has been wholeheartedly backing him, and I'm sure the policies of Mr. Trump are going to be similar, if not more. Although he has said that I'm going to bring about peace in Middle East, but on whose terms? So the important thing is that not only the bloodshed ceases over there, reconstruction, post-conflict rehabilitation begins, but more important than that is the political solution. The Arabs have agreed many years ago that they are ready to cohabit with the Jews, and they have been saying that the two-state solution is acceptable to us. But I think, and we all know that it's not acceptable to Israel now.
Of course.
So,
seems like it at least.
So in my idea, my personal view, there should be one-state solution. There should be a Palestinian state, and the Jews should live as equal citizens in the Palestinian state, as they had been living there for centuries. So that is one thing that at least the Muslims and
But you know, to be very fair, Dr. Tughral, if you were saying this in an international forum, I'm sure you would have been negated by now.
No, I would have been kicked out. But this is my personal opinion.
I agree. Yeah. I accept your point of view on that. We were talking of Joe Biden. Let's talk about him as well. He has said his country over the coming days is going to make another push with Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and others for a ceasefire in Gaza Strip. He says this effort would aim for the release of the captives held in Gaza and an end to the war without Hamas in power. Is there a hope for a Gaza ceasefire under the preconditions that the US is putting forward?
Not at all. Gaza, the Hamas will not release the hostages unless their demands are met. And I think their demand would be that the Israelis should vacate Gaza. They should go. And Gaza should have some kind of autonomy. I don't think they are going to tolerate occupation forces in Gaza, and they are not going to release the hostages. You might be aware, I'm sure you are aware of it, that Netanyahu had made an offer some time back that he's going to pay each Palestinian, I'm sure, $5 million if he or she is able to get him back one of the hostages. He's also going to give him or her safe passage and anonymity. So they want the hostage release, and
I think that is all they want. You know, they don't care about the Palestinians.
They want to kill everybody. That's the full stop to that. They don't want anything else. They want to kill them all. They want the hostages back, and they want Hamas to be broken, destroyed forever. But these ideologies cannot be destroyed.
Ideologies can never be destroyed. A philosophy can never be destroyed. Osama Muhammad Nazzal joins us from Jenin. Osama, thank you very much to have joined us. Osama, I'd like to ask two questions directly to you. First of all, how do you see the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire deal, and is there any hope My second question is there any hope for the people in Gaza for a ceasefire in the coming days as well?
Yeah, first, thank you very much for having me. And I would like to answer first the second part of your question with regard to the hope of the Palestinian people to see the Israeli genocidal campaign ended. I think there is no hope until now because of many factors and any indicators that reveal that the Israeli occupation prime minister and his government are determined to continue their genocide against Gaza, and the massacres that were committed yesterday and today after the ceasefire with Lebanon is a big indicator to that. With regard to Lebanon ceasefire, first, this is the wish of every Palestinian really, and every human being to see no more bloodshed anywhere on the planet, and the Palestinian people and the Palestinian leadership welcome this step with hope that the ceasefire would hold. But regrettably, we saw how the Israeli occupation forces just yesterday, when the agreement was declared, they opened fire at Lebanese civilians trying to return to their villages and killed a number of them. And today the Israeli forces did the same, but the Lebanese resistance did not respond to the Israeli action. And there is real intention really, and this is clear by the Lebanese resistance to have the ceasefire implemented. All the people in the region and in the world are waiting to see, but we learned from the history and from the everyday experience that the Israeli occupation should not be trusted, and they always have like schemes and machinations, and they might destroy the agreement anytime and resume bombarding Lebanon, especially a large percentage of the Israeli society, not only the political level, but the Israeli society are against that agreement. Back to Gaza, Gaza is butchered, Gaza is slaughtered every minute, and the Israeli plan is clear: reoccupation and recolonization of Gaza.
Before I go to Dr. Tughral Yamin, I'd like to understand, as the United Kingdom, France and Germany have given us joint statement, they urge Israel to renew vital banking ties with the Palestinian financial institutions for at least 12 months. Do you feel this could be implemented? And also, both these three countries, the United Kingdom, France and Germany, has emphasized that there is no technical justification for withholding a longer term extension, cutting improvements in, they also cited improvements in the Palestinian financial oversight. Do you feel that there is a genuine concern about the financial oversight in Palestine and the way Israel is moving to cut that as well? To add to that, the Central Bureau of Statistics in Palestine says that due to the war in Gaza, the Palestinian territory's private sector losses have amounted to about $8 billion in the last 14 months. I'd like your comment on both these.
Dear Omar, apart from the status and from the reports about the financial, economic, demographic situation in Palestine, the situation in Palestine is no longer really. It is difficult for you living away from Palestine to imagine how the Palestinians that run their life in Gaza and the West Bank really. There is no possibility for life in Gaza these days. Israel ended any possibility, particularly in the northern part of Gaza. So billions of dollars needed in order to rebuild Gaza if the war stops. But until now, the moment we talk, we don't see any indicator or any sign that Israel is going to stop its war against Gaza. And Israel has one plan on the table, I think now, which is to reduce the number of the people by minimum. And this was declared by the Israeli finance minister Smotrich that the number of the Palestinians is going to be reduced by half. So he is talking about some islands of a human population in Gaza, a few Palestinians to be run by the Israeli occupation, and they don't talk about a normal life for the Palestinian people after the war in Gaza. In the West Bank, the situation is horrible. Israeli military raids into every Palestinian town and city every day. And the more dangerous thing is the Israeli settlement expansion, as Israel taking over almost all of the land of the Palestinian people, living with small communities, the overpopulated areas run by the Palestinian authorities. So we are not talking about a sustainable situation if things go in this direction without an intervention from the world, and you will see no Jerusalem and you will see no Palestine in the few upcoming years. That is the situation we have today.
All right. Dr. Tughral, Yamin, Israel has denied 82 of 91 attempts by the United Nations to deliver aid to northern Gaza between early October and the 25th of November. Israel has denied 82 requests to deliver aid and 9 other attempts to bring humanitarian supplies to the north of the territory. And the conditions of survival of the people in the besieged enclave is diminishing with each passing day. There have been statements by UNRWA, there have been statements by the United Nations, other agencies as well to highlight this as well. And this whole strip remains on the verge of famine as well. We have discussed that in the past as well. What happens to Palestine now? Will the world watch silently while the people die of starvation?
And the world should not watch silently. It is criminal neglect on part of the entire world. First of all, I think the people of Palestine need protection, and I have said that on many occasions, that the world is bound under the responsibility to protect legislation of the UN to come to the aid of people who are being killed genocidally. No genocide, no more genocide. That was the oath that the world took after Rwanda and Srebrenica, that they will not sit silently if there is genocide, and genocide is happening. So I think the world has got to act. There has got to be a global protection force to protect the Palestinians, and only then you can start reconstruction and funds can be created.
But who will pay for those funds, Dr. Saab? Who will pay?
Everybody should pay for those funds. The world was ready to pay for the climate effects that countries like us experience.
But so why not? There's a difference between the pledges and the implementation. That also you should remember.
I know that. But you see, if everybody in the world pledges that Palestine needs to be reconstructed, Palestine needs to be protected, Palestine needs another life, then all these things are possible. I think where there's a will, there's a way. It's very much doable.
Okay, if you say so. It is doable, but we need the intent and we need the implementation of that intent. 44,000 plus people have died, Dr. Saab, and 104,000 plus people have been injured. And this is just the official statement. Once the war ends, we'll know exactly the real numbers that have happened. You know, at the same time, when you see the number of people who are also under siege, the number of people who are being denied water, food, health facilities, and then on top of it, we've got a far-right finance minister in Israel, Smotrich, that also Osama alluded to, who said Israel should occupy the Gaza Strip and have its Palestinian population by half its Palestinian population by encouraging immigration, voluntary immigration of the Palestinians. What kind of statement is that? You remember in the beginning, somebody talked about mowing the lawn, very, very beginning of this conflict, and now we still have statements such as these. What's your take on that?
Israelis are cruel people. They have forgotten whatever happened to them in the Holocaust. They are doing more than that. They have forgotten that they have been wandering in the desert for 40 years.
Yes.
We know the biblical story about it. So these people are remorseless. But the world has to take an action. Organization of Islamic Conference need to take action. Arab League needs to take action. It is happening to Gaza or the West Bank now. It might happen to other countries. And I am still not very sure what is Iran's position in all this, because they are still suffering from the October 27 attack, was it, when the Israelis struck them? They haven't taken their revenge till now. So things are still in a flux. And,
so we don't know what's going to happen, but anyways, let's hope for stability. Let's hope for some kind of a peaceful process moving along. Final question to you, Osama. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar says ICC has no jurisdiction or no justification for issuing arrest warrants for the Israeli leaders. But of course, EU leader Joseph Borrell says otherwise, and he said the EU countries need to comply with this ICC decision. In this whole very strange kind of a situation following the ICC decision, what do you foresee as far as the implementation of the ICC decision is concerned?
Sure, the ICC is the first or the second judicial body on planet, and more than I think 128 or 164 states are party to this international body, and according to the international law, its decisions must be respected and must be implemented, as they are mandatory to all the states that are party to it. So it depends on how the world wants to see itself. If the world respects itself, respects its organizations and rules and laws, then this decision by the ICC, which is really the least that the world can offer to the Palestinian people in light of the horrible genocidal act that Israel is committing against the Palestinians, there should be
on that, Osama. We're a bit short of time. We would have continued to talk, but there is a bit short as far as our time duration is concerned. Thank you very much, Osama Mohammed Nazzal, to have joined us all the way from Jenin to give us an update as far as the situation in Palestine and Lebanon is concerned. And thank you very much, Dr. Tughral, Yamin as well, to have come all the way to the studios to give your eminent point of view on the Middle East crisis as well. Let's come to the last two stories while I finish our show. A historic milestone has been achieved at the Pakistan Stock Exchange, where the PSX went beyond 100,000 mark. This is a benchmark that has never been seen in Pakistan's history, and now Pakistan has surpassed this, which shows A, the investor confidence in Pakistan, and B, the way the government has been handling Pakistan's economy, and things seem to be moving in the right direction. Finally, UNESCO says 2/3 of content creators have failed to check the accuracy of their material, making them and their followers vulnerable to misinformation. At the same time, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also says that social media and artificial intelligence are fueling the worst human impulses. This is what we have seen in Pakistan. This is what we've seen in other countries as well. It's time to maybe work together, unified on one stand, as to stop disinformation and misinformation once and for all, to have an era of at least stability and news that is coming in that is legal, that is right, that is not based on falsehoods. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's news. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.